Welcome everyone to another episode of Real Good Movies. I'm your host Will Beeman, the production manager for College TV at Purdue Fort Wayne. And this month we're once again discussing some of the films that are worth your attention, as well as discussing the marquee film of the month, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I'm joined once again this month with Ryan Peasley and Ethan Burns. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. And Ethan, how are you?
Living the dream, same as always.
Living the dream, I like to hear it. No other introductions to go through this time besides that, so buy your ticket, grab your popcorn, and take a seat. The show is about to begin.
Gosh, I love movies.
Okay, and now it's time for the first segment of the show where we discuss the films we've watched throughout the month since the last time we recorded. But this time we're going to do things a little bit different than we did the last show. This time when we talk about the movies that we've watched, we're going to pick one or two that we're also going to recommend that you seek out on your own to watch. So let's go ahead and start with Ryan. Ryan, what did you watch this month?
Cool. So I watched quite a few films this month, but the one that I would recommend to everybody is Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I didn't know what to expect with that movie going into it. I knew it was going to kind of be like a multiverse kind of thing. I knew it was an A24 film, which I really like A24 films. But while it does have some sci-fi elements to it, there's also this deeper underlying message. It's kind of like a philosophical problem that a lot of Americans have, whether you're an immigrant or somebody who grew up in the States, as to like what meaning is. We follow this mother. She's in like her 50s, I think. She immigrated here from China, and she's starting to have all these regrets and thoughts about how her life would be different if she had done this or if she didn't do that. And so as the film progresses, she goes through the multiverse and kind of sees all the different ways that her life could have ended up. And it really touches on that philosophical problem that Americans kind of tend to have. But there's also like great action sequences. There's great, incredible choreography. Some of my favorite action sequences I've seen in a film in a long time. There's a scene where, I forget the actor's name, but he plays Short Round in Indiana Jones. He plays the father, and he beats up a bunch of people with a fanny pack. And it's really awesome to watch. It's really great to watch. This film is like really funny, but it's also really emotional, and it's really touching, and it goes everywhere and touches on everything, and everything is happening all of the time.
All at once.
It is really a great film. I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. I'd recommend everybody go see it.
Okay, awesome. Did you watch anything else this month, or?
So I also watched The Northman just last night, which was really great Viking epic, starring Alex Skarsgård, I think, another A24 film. Robert Eggers did The Lighthouse and The Witch, also really great films. I recommend those if you haven't seen those yet. Alex Skarsgård is a young kid coming up. His father is a king of a tribe. I forget what the tribe is called, but he gets killed really early on in the film, and so it's a revenge story.
Right.
And it kind of it's a typical like hero's story, but you don't see Alex Skarsgård as a good hero all of the time. Like there are some things he does and some choices he makes that really make you question, like, is this the good guy that we want to root for? Like, we don't really know. So it does a really great job of implementing some like old Norse mythology. There's like some stuff about Valkyries in there, and Odin and Yggdrasil, which is like the world tree. And it's a really great film. I think the pacing was a little off. It didn't quite flow exactly like I'd like it to. There were some scenes that felt like maybe they happened too fast or things took too long. But again, really great action sequences in this. There's a scene where Skarsgård catches a spear that's thrown at him, turns around and throws it back. Really satisfying to watch. really satisfying to watch. But it's made really well, and I like that a lot. So if you're into some like very heavy metal action scenes with lots of swords and witches and Alex Skarsgård being just buff
A
and,
big
and,
buff
and man.
Viking
like-
man, yeah.
yeah, go see
Yeah.
that because it was a really good film.
Okay, yeah, those are good spoiler-free sales pitches on both those films.
Thank you.
Yeah, because especially with Everything Everywhere, I'm going to touch on that a little bit too. But it's very hard to really explain the complex parts of that movie without really giving it away. So
Oh my gosh,
that was a good
yeah.
job teetering that line
Thank
there.
you, thank you.
Ethan, how about you?
I like the dichotomy of I think the movies we're gonna recommend because he's gonna recommend a lot of newer stuff, but I'm very nostalgic. I like to watch nostalgic stuff. So I actually watched. I wanted to bring the movies that are some of my all-time favorites of movies I've ever watched. All this month I rewatched my favorite movie of all time is How to Train Your Dragon. That I think I've watched it twice a month since it first came out in like 2011. It is just the soundtrack, the animation style, the characters, everything about this movie is just beautiful. If you haven't seen it, basically, speaking of Vikings, there's this village named Burke that is a group of Vikings, and they have this massive dragon issue that keep coming in and they just steal other sheep. And the main character, Hiccup, is this like really scrawny, weak Viking who's just way more intelligent than everybody else there, except for like a couple other main characters, main side characters, I suppose. And Hiccup, he wants to be this big Viking like his dad is. His dad's the chief, and he shoots down with this invention that he made, a dragon called a Night Fury, which is like the dragon to get. Like it is the top dog of all the dragons of what they know of. And he goes to try and find it, and he sees it just like in the woods, and he goes to kill it, but he can't bring himself to do it. And then he just frees the dragon, and it goes to fly away, but then it falls, and he realizes that the back of his tail, half of it is missing, so he can't fly away. And so it's about those two kind of building a friendship almost of like, I understand you, you're like me, we're both sort of crippled in the life that we live now, and it's about how they become just like best of friends. None of the dragons talk, but there's this amazing scene halfway through the movie where he's learning all about what that dragon likes and doesn't like, and so he goes back to his village of Burke, and he's like taking grass out of his pocket, and it's like calming the dragons down, and they're like, how is he doing this? And then he grabs an eel and he like throws it at him, and the dragons run away because they don't like eels. And it's really smart. It's world building at its best. There's 3 movies in the trilogy. All 3 of them I've given 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 5. The perfect score, whatever I can give it. And then on the complete 180 side, I watched one of my favorite horror movies of all time, which is Alien. That movie is just so good. I don't get scared at movies anymore, really, because I watch horror all the time. It's one of my favorite genres. And Alien is just one of those movies I sit down, and it doesn't matter if it's, noon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon or, 2 at night, or 2 in the morning, I should say. It's terrifying. It is really like edge of your seat. It's just one of those movies that is timelessly scary. This one's a real quick, simple plot. You got a group of space people that are out in space. They find an alien. It gets loose on the ship, and they try to survive. And it is horrifyingly claustrophobic.
Yeah,
If you don't like tight spaces, maybe you should watch it if you want to get scared. So those are the 2.
Perhaps I should have tried throwing an eel at the alien.
Yeah, you know what? They should have thrown a little rainbow eel at him. Maybe the xenomorph would have just...
I had, as always, because it's my number 1 hobby, I have had a very busy movie month again. I started out the month seeing our Fanged King Morbius. And I'm not gonna lie, that movie's not as terrible as the internet makes it sound.
Really?
But I also think I have a unique perspective because 2 friends and I have been doing something that we call The Quest. And what we've been doing is watching every comic book movie that's been theatrically released since the beginning. So like we started with a 1952 Superman film and have worked all the way up from there. So like we've got decades of context of what a truly awful comic book movie is.
Yeah.
So like I think it's just kind of given us like this inherent perspective to where we can watch something like Morbius and just be like, it exists, and
Yeah.
that was it. I really didn't have any feeling either way towards it, but like, it just wasn't as bad, I guess, as the internet makes it seem to be. But so that's what I started the month with, and then so I watched Metal Lords that was on Netflix. That's a new film that came out. That's written by D.B. Weiss, the co-creator of Game of Thrones TV show or whatever, and like my favorite music genre is metal, and like I was in a metal band at some point, and I think if I found this movie when I was in high school, it would have been one of like my favorite movies ever. But like coming to it as an adult who's like a has-been and is no way, shape, or form close to being in a band, it doesn't have that like coming of age inspiration as it did, but it's still entertaining. It was a good watch at least, but nothing really write home about. I also saw the action epic from Bollywood, RRR, which stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt. And it's a 3-hour film of these two made-up characters and their journey to like leading India through its revolution against England. Wow. But it has some of the coolest action scenes in the world. Like I had it does not feel 3 hours long. The action is awesome. There's an epic dance sequence. It's such a dude's rock film too. Yeah. And like, I mean, there's a point where a character flies 30 feet across the screen and then punches a tiger. If that doesn't sell you to watch this movie, I don't know what does. Unfortunately, I looked this morning as of when we're filming this, and none of our theaters have it anymore. But I did see Netflix has picked up the streaming rights for June. So when that hits Netflix, everyone should watch this film because it has done well enough in the box office, which is how I heard of it, that it's the most financially successful Bollywood film to date so far.
Oh, really?
So like, it was awesome. Like, I'm gonna watch it multiple times once it's on streaming, but it was great. And then the one that I was gonna recommend as well is Everything Everywhere All at Once, because the movie, it's unique, it's funny, it's got a ton of heart. And it's very reminiscent of like the Daniels, as the directors call them, because they're both named Daniel. Like they also did Swiss Army Man. So like they do movies that are just like super modern, goofy, but have so much heart behind them that because like there's a point in the story with Everything Everywhere at Once that hit so close to home. Like I sobbed through the last 40 minutes of that movie.
Absolutely.
I was not expecting it to hit that emotional at all.
Absolutely.
And once it did, it doesn't let go. Because then you're just like, this is one of the most relatable films I have ever seen, ever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, they kind of need to retire the multiverse concept now because it's been done perfect. Like, I'm sorry, Doctor Strange, but
Absolutely.
I don't see how they'll be able to handle it any better than this movie did.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, man. I cried those last 20, 40 minutes.
There's a point, and when you see it,
I haven't seen it.
when you see it, you will know.
I'm really lost.
It's just gonna hit, and you're gonna be like, oh, this is what Real Good Movies was talking about.
I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
But yeah, so that was a 5 out of 5 movie for me as well. I think it's gonna be hard to top that movie this year, and like
I think so as well.
my way too early Oscar predictions is if it doesn't get Best Picture, it'll for sure get a Best Screenplay nomination because the story is just incredible. And then last night, I didn't see The Northman. I saw The Bad Guys, the animated DreamWorks film. And it is very much just a kid's version of Ocean's 11. And I love the Ocean's films.
Yeah.
So I really liked this.
Oh, okay, good.
It's funny. It's good. The caper twists are good. And it's funny because they don't hide that they're just trying to make a family-friendly Ocean's 11 because Sam Rockwell plays Mr. Wolf, who's like the Clooney-esque character. And there's a part in the movie where he's like trying to smooth talk his way out of a situation, and they even say, "Are you trying to Clooney me right now?" So like, it worked. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 because it is ultimately like a children's film, but like it was a lot of fun. I don't regret watching it at all. But yeah, so that was all. I am seeing The Northman tonight when we're filming this, and then I'm seeing The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent tomorrow. The Nick Cage film. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then last but not least is I saw Apollo 10 and a half on Netflix, the new Richard Linklater film. And one thing he does really well is coming of age storytelling. And in this movie, he makes you feel nostalgic for being a kid in 1969, whether you were alive for that era or not. Because I surely wasn't. My parents were like 9 in 1969. And I feel like after that movie was done, I was like, man, I missed that day. And I have no recollection of how that era was, but it was good. It was definitely worth a watch. So that's going to do it for our recommendations and in our renamed segment, Real Good Recommendations. So now we're going to cut to the box office breakdown for the month of April 2022. Starting off with number one at the top is the marquee film of the month, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 at $127.8 million. Sonic crushed it its opening weekend and exceeded its expectations and got 70 million raked in on that first weekend. Second is our fanged king, Morbius, who has made a fitting $66.6 million this month. And it's hilarious because that number has barely gone up since its opening weekend. Number three is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, The Secrets of Dumbledore. That's pulled in $51.2 million, which is a franchise low, but it's still doing pretty well in the post-current pandemic era of box office release. The Harry Potter fandom has somehow completely passed me over, so I personally don't have an interest in seeing that. But we'll discuss these results here in a little bit. The Lost City coming in at number 4 at $40.7 million. I'm really happy to see these mid-budget comedy films taking off in the box office the way they should be. And then rounding out, last but not least, is The Batman at $27.8 million, which is only going to dwindle further now that it is available on HBO Max to stream. And once again, just like last month, as you can see in the disclaimer, these are U.S. domestic totals. Something that's interesting to me that just missed out on here is Ambulance has been a catastrophic flop for filmmaker Michael Bay, and it is barely in the top 10 right now in box office totals. So it'll be interesting to see how those mid-level action films do this year in the box office as well. And then I'm sure Bad Guys, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and The Northman will end up on there after this weekend, but we are recording this episode before they are full, the day they come out. So we'll see how that comes out. But are there any thoughts, Ryan, that you have on the box office this month? Any surprises? Anything seem too high, low? Anything like that?
So I haven't seen Morbius yet, but I do think it's really funny to see that it has 66.6 million, being a movie about a vampire,
Right.
Kind of an evil type guy. I do like seeing Sonic the Hedgehog up there at number 1, seeing that. I thought that movie was actually pretty good. So it's nice to see that up there. Batman coming up in the top 5, that really kind of surprised me because it did just come to HBO. I figured, why would anybody go see it in the theaters anymore if you can just watch it at home?
Right.
But I guess people are really wanting to, get back out into theaters and have that movie theater experience because it is different, I feel like, to watch Batman in a theater than it is to watch it at home. Because as soon as it came on HBO Max, I started streaming it, in the background, just put it on. And it is such a different feel. You know, I think people are starting to get their lust for theater going back again.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right. Ethan, what about you?
I also did see Morbius. I think we have different views on it. I didn't hate it. I did read some of the internet reviews, and I'm like, okay, I think some people are a little too critical on it. I mean, I don't think it was good by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a Marvel property. Marvel does this thing where they have tiers to when they release movies of No Way Home, Endgame. Those are their market and push this because they know it's gonna be good. Then they've got their mid tier. Those are the Thor Ragnarok or this new Thor Love and Thunder movie. Those mid tier. I'm seeing some ads for it, about as much as I'd expect. Then you have these third tier movies like Morbius, where it's I saw a trailer for it in a theater, and then all the YouTube ads that are pushed on it on movie channels, and then that's it. And I think Marvel sort of had an idea that it was gonna be that third tier. So I think second is about where it's the top it's ever going to be. Also saw The Lost City, great movie. I'm so glad it's there. I totally forgot to even mention that in the movies that I watched this month. Also watched that this month. It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a great adventure style movie. I sat in the theater, loved every second of it. Wasn't perfect. There were some weird moments in it where I'm like, okay. And I can't say what those weird moments are because they're like big moments in the story. So, but yeah, that's, yeah, I'm glad to see The Lost City up there. And I also need to watch, what is it, Everywhere? And I need to watch that movie, I guess.
Yes, you do. But would you agree in The Lost City, Brad Pitt has the best cameo of all time?
Oh, best. Oh,
it's so
best,
good.
literally the best. That was the spoiler I was worried about. Yeah, that was literally the funniest. I was like, huh, awesome.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
It's so good.
And it happens and you're like, cool, bye.
Yeah.
Then he goes.
Yeah, that was a good movie, and I guess Channing Tatum is going to be the savior for the mid-budget comedies, though, because he had Dog and that back-to-back months that both crushed it in the overall box office.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming back to acting, Channing Tatum.
Yes, dude, thank you.
We apparently needed you in the box office really bad.
Magic Mike was great, and then you left, and then you're back, and you're killing it with these really sad or exciting movies. It's like, okay.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for the box office breakdown. So that leads us into our next and final segment, the marquee film review of the month, where we will be talking about Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Back in the director's chair is going to be Jeff Fowler, joined once again by his writing partners Pat Casey and Josh Miller, who are joined this time by John Whittington of Lego Batman and Lego Ninjago fame. James Marsden returns as Tom, Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik, Ben Schwartz as Sonic, Idris Elba as Knuckles, and Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Miles Tails Prower. This is going to be the portion, just like last month's episode, where we are going to be going into full spoilers for Sonic 2. So if you haven't seen it yet, pause right here, go watch the movie, then come back and finish the episode. But we'll throw up the spoiler logo like we did last month. But that was on my bad hosting spot, where last month I did not say we were going to go into spoilers until we just went into it. But
surprise.
We made it up with the spoiler tag, so it was okay.
We're working out the kinks.
Yeah, so let's go around now and just kind of... There's really no nuance to discuss with Sonic 2, I guess, unfortunately. But we can kind of just talk about our overall thoughts and then just dive in a little bit from there. So let's just start. Ethan, what did you overall think of Sonic the Hedgehog 2?
You know, I was actually talking to you about this before the show started. I was saying there were two types of kids back in the day. There were Mario kids and there were Sonic kids. I was a Sonic kid. I played most of the games. I watched the TV show from the 80s. My dad actually owned some of them, or no, not my dad, my uncle, excuse me, owned some of them. And I would go over to his house and I'd just watch the 80s cartoon. And then Sonic Boom came out of nowhere of this, like, on Cartoon Network. It's this, like, oddly really amazing TV show that's meant for kids, but it's got, like, these jokes in it where you're like, what? You can't say that to kids. And so I watched the first Sonic movie in theaters, gave it about a 5.5 out of 10. I mean, it was okay. It set like a groundwork of like what I expected from a Sonic show or Sonic movie. And then the second movie was released, and I obviously watched it, and it was surprisingly so much better than the first one. It was more funny. The character development, and obviously I'll get into it, so all of us will get into it here in a little bit, but the character dichotomy between Knuckles and Sonic, it's there with Tails too. Tails is there as just kind of like the smart one that like says when Sonic's doing something really stupid. It's like he's the voice of the audience, like, don't do that.
Right.
But Sonic and Knuckles have this like moral, based on their past, where they came from. They've got this like level of like, I think this, and the other one's like, well, I think this, and they constantly are at each other's throat as to who's right, and it boils down to, well, you know, I think it's just agree to disagree, but there's this bigger threat that's going against both of our ideas, so we kind of have to work together. And I was like, I was just really surprised that the movie, all at the same time, didn't take itself too seriously. It's a Sonic movie. They were having a fun time with it. They were, you know, they put a lot of effort into it, but there were a lot of like those serious moments that was, I believe, delivered really well for kids or young adults to enjoy, especially if you grew up, you know, playing the Sonic games, watching the TV show. I think they did a beautiful job with it. I found myself laughing a couple of jokes at them. It was literally the tail end of the movie as Sonic looks at Knuckles and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go get desserts. Do you want dessert?" And Knuckles is like, "Well, there'll be grapes." And it's like, what? And it made me laugh. There are some jokes where I'm like, okay, those were, you gotta have the fart jokes and all that, but there weren't. I think there was only like one, and it was like really quick, and I'm like, okay, it's out of the way, it's gone,
Yeah.
and then that was it. And but I'm glad at the level of respect that they had for. Obviously, it's for kids, but there are some kids' movies, TV shows that are really smart and that really work. And this one, I think, really worked. It really surprised me. I was really happy with it. So, yeah.
Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it is a really smart kids movie because so I hadn't seen Sonic 1. I haven't seen the first one, so I'm not going to compare it to the first one.
Okay.
But this one on its own, I think the character dynamic between Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles is really where the movie hits home for me. Because I remember this scene where Sonic and Tails this is after they have their like dance battle in the lodge or whatever.
Yep.
Tails is telling Sonic about how he always kind of felt like an outcast because he had two tails. And, Sonic wants to be his friend anyway. And so there's kind of this underlying message of like, it's okay to be weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to be you. You don't have to fit in with everybody else to have friends. And I think that's such a like nice message to send to kids out there. I really think it is. There isn't a whole lot of nuance to this film, and that's fine, I think, because I was telling Ethan earlier, I was kind of struggling on how to review this film because I am an adult now. It's not really for me necessarily. Right. It's for kids. So through my kid lens, this movie's awesome.
Right.
There's great fight scenes. Sonic looks awesome. Him and Knuckles, clash, and it's awesome. Sonic parties in the house when Tom is gone. That's a really great scene.
Yeah.
He's throwing candy everywhere, and there's a lot of action, and I think it's a really great kids movie. And of course, Jim Carrey just steals the show. He's
so
and
good.
everything he's in, he's so good. He's so good. I mean, like, we got to give him props because he's got to be like 59 or something now, 60 years
He said
old.
he's retiring.
Well, allegedly.
Allegedly,
We'll
he
see,
wants to retire, but I think if they asked him to do Sonic, they'd be like, oh yeah. Like from what the interview was saying, because everybody's saying like he's retiring, he's all gone, but what he really said was he's retiring from doing things that he doesn't want to do anymore.
Right.
So he's not going to do a lot of projects. Like he's going to be very selective of the movies that or maybe even a TV show, what he wants to do. So
Right. I think he was really one of the best parts of this film, the way he plays Eggman.
absolutely.
He has so much energy. He's a living cartoon character, and he just fits in perfect
That
in this
movie
world.
was Jim Carrey's world, and we were just observing it.
Yeah.
That is basically what
Yeah,
that. Because so many
absolutely.
of his scenes are just in the reality of things. Him with a green screen background, acting alone.
Yeah.
And he sells it like. I have not seen
totally.
Jim Carrey that unhinged in a film since The Grinch, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good stuff.
I mean, I agree with both of you guys. Where like it is a really good kids movie, and you can tell and know that the market is for people that are like 9 and younger, but it does work when they sneak in the stuff that's like for the adults that supposed to have taken their kids, but I went
Certainly.
without one.
yeah, I'm
But
saying
like
theater.
the jokes do hit though, like the Rock versus Vin Diesel joke and stuff like, or like the Pantera needle drop, like that stuff all worked really well, and the movie experience itself really reminded me of what it's like to be in a full theater with children that don't sit still. It's been a long time since I've been in a movie theater where there were kids just climbing all over the place throughout the movie, and I was like, I don't think I missed this as much as I thought I did, but that's to be expected in a Sonic movie. But it's a really fun time, and I think to compare it against the first one is obviously going to be there because there's 2 of them, but the storytelling is so much better in this one.
Yeah.
Like the first movie is just the very basic, bare bones, like could have been any children's adventure film that they just happened to put Sonic in. This one felt like a Sonic adventure that
Yeah.
was unique to that franchise and those characters. And you can tell every human actor in the movie is having one of the best filming experiences of their life. They all radiate fun,
Yeah.
which I think is only what makes each performance so much better.
Yeah, and James Marsden, he's one of those actors that is just constantly casted in like these like mid-tier movies. Like usually it's like it's always the like I don't know if you've noticed this. It's always like the half animated, half live action. Like it's the
Hop.
Marsden curse.
Yeah.
And like every single time, like you watch him and you're like, you are just doing this for a paycheck, man. Like, do you enjoy acting? Like,
Yeah.
I feel bad, like, cause you are a good actor. Like, you do sell a lot of the stuff. And then in this movie, dude, he was just having the time of his life. He was like, I'm in a Sonic movie and I'm gonna have a great time with it. You could tell he liked the director, he liked doing the work, he was genuinely happy to be there. And even in comparison to the first Sonic movie, like there were a couple scenes of of like him in the background just like there.
Yeah.
And then this one, he's not ever like not smiling unless like Sonic's doing something really annoying.
Right.
But like in like the background, he's not becoming like an idle NPC just like standing there. He's like genuinely just happy to be on set working with this project. So
that scene of him and Sonic in the boat where he's talking to Sonic about needing more
Oh
responsibility,
my gosh.
it's so sweet. Like
Yeah.
it's really, really sweet.
Real
I really
heartfelt.
like that scene.
Yeah.
It's very heartfelt, and it really has it's got a good place in the movie because it doesn't cause a rift between him and Donut Lord is what he calls him.
Yeah.
Donut
Yeah,
Lord.
it doesn't cause a rift. Like they kind of like understand each other and they fist bump and they're like, okay, we're cool now, you know.
Yeah.
And the one thing I didn't like about this movie is the wedding plot line.
Yeah, that was a little
Like
weird.
it was a little weird, and I know that it was like kind of like a setup for like Gunn to make an appearance, right? I forget what that stands for.
Yeah, the
but-
government agency or whatever.
Yeah,
it was like,
yeah, but it just seemed kind of a little convoluted for them
Right.
to try and catch Sonic at this wedding. That
yeah.
I don't know.
Almost too convoluted for a kid's film, let alone like
Right.
an adult cinema film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could feel the little kid in me being like, dude, show me Sonic going fast.
Yeah.
Run, dude.
I don't
Yeah.
care that Tom Marsden's getting beamed in the face with the volleyball over and over again.
And that
like,
that whole sequence had like the majority of like the parents we didn't forget about you jokes. It was like that
Yes.
5-minute section too, where it's like maybe they were like, well, this is when the kid's in the bathroom. We'll give something for the parents for a little bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
yeah, I would agree the wedding subplot was a little
But
out
once
of
it was
left field.
Yeah, once it was over, it was gone.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
like halfway through the
yeah.
movie, once Sonic like came through the ring, and this is one thing I want to talk about. I am so glad because in the first movie, I get it. He's running around the city. It's cool to see Sonic run around the city. We finally have a live action Green Hill Zone. We've got a live action Snowy Peak, and we've got a live action Labyrinth. Those are all real puzzles. The first obviously Green Hill is
That's classic.
every single Sonic movie. The second, the next two were from Sonic 3, Sonic Adventure, and again, I'm a Sonic guy. It was so awesome. And that first scene where Knuckles shows up, he's in the ring, and all of those like mushrooms and stuff are behind him, and he calls for Sonic, and then they all light up blue, and it was just so cool. It was like, that's so awesome, dude. I was like, yes, yes, I love Sonic. Like, bring him out. And then they put him back in the city. I'm like, oh, you were so close. I'm glad I got like half the movie in like Sonic World, and it was so cool to see it live. And it was like almost to the point where it could be somewhere on Earth, but then like the temple comes out of the water, and you're like, yes, thank you for doing that. I loved seeing that. It was awesome.
I was really hoping during the snowboarding scene that they played the Escape the City
Yes!
song from
Yes.
Sonic Adventure 2. It would have fit so perfect.
It would have
in that
been
moment.
so
That'd be awesome.
good.
But I don't know why they didn't. But that's what do want to give props though to the writers, Pat Casey, Josh Miller, and John Whittington, because I'm pretty sure they wrote a joke in that movie that literally, out of anyone that's seen Sonic, only I will get. And they had a reference to the 1951 science fiction film The Day the Earth Stood Still at the very beginning.
Did they really?
When the echidnas come through the ring at first, and Dr. Robotnik does the Klaatu Barada Nikto, which is the line from that movie.
Oh.
I was the only one in the theater that laughed and got excited. And I was like, there's no one that's seeing this movie that's going to get that reference, but I appreciate it existing because that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
And so it's one I've seen way more than somebody my age should see. and I know no one saw the remake from 2008 because I barely have seen the remake from 2008. So like, thank you for including me in your script. And thank you for thinking of me when you wrote this movie.
I wondered what that was because it sounded really specific.
It sounded like a reference, and I was like,
that is a line that the alien uses in The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Right.
So like, it's kind of a classic sci-fi line in the way that that's like a masterpiece sci-fi film.
Yeah.
Nothing I would expect in a Sonic film at all. Like so, like when Jim Carrey said that, I was just like, "There's no way."
Yeah.
Can we rewind it, please? I need to.
Yeah, and to give them more props, like they do such a good job of mixing in references from all these different time frames, like the Green Hill Zone.
yes.
Like, I got that right. Like my 8-year-old nephew might not get that because he's not played a whole lot of Sonic games. He's seen the shows and stuff, but like there's stuff in there for kids that are like kids. For people that are my age, you know, in their 20s, there's people in there. There's something you got, you know, from even further back, and then there's stuff for kids too.
Right.
I feel like that's really hard to do to get a good mix of all those different kinds of references.
And I think that's probably where John Whittington's kind of help came in with the Lego experience.
Yes.
Because, like, those movies, every one of them does a very generational brand of humor to them.
Right.
So I think maybe that's where his expertise kind of came in. They're like, we're going to make sure there's a joke for 6-year-olds all the way to 56-year-olds.
Yes.
Right.
If you're older than 56 and saw it, then you too.
Congrats.
And
but they do a good job
Yeah.
of keeping that in there. But,
Definitely, and it works because Sonic spans those generations, you know?
And I'm glad they brought the voice actor for Miles from the video games back to do the character in the movie too.
Definitely.
Very, very respectful way of doing that character. I think.
I think so too. Yeah, I really like Tails' voice in this.
Idris is always good.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, he's good in this movie, and he does have his hit movies, but I just wish he could get like a better agent to get some better movies.
Yeah, he needs like just a real like Oscar buzzed movie.
He needs the one.
Yes,
but
because
I think he'll get there.
He's a good sport when it comes to like these kid movies. I mean, if
like
you're Idris Elba sitting in your multi-billion-dollar mansion, just like people doing whatever you want for them, your butler comes over with a phone. Like it's, I don't know, like I don't know why I imagine him living in like the 1880s with like a little butler, and he's like, come here. And he just answers his phone and is like, you want to do Sonic? He's like, yeah. Sure. Like,
Why not?
Okay. And he does a great job. Like Knuckles in this movie was one of my favorite parts. I like just his voice. I don't know, like hearing Idris Elba play Knuckles, like going up to bat or like just like talking to Sonic and Tails. And I got this vibe. I know you guys haven't seen it. I know last time I talked about Demon Slayer and the Mugen Train. But in the Demon Slayer show, there's this character who has like this beast like helmet on, and he's just this big force of nature. And he's not very smart. He's really not bright at all. But he calls all of like the other like Demon Slayers little underlings, and he thinks he's like the leader. And that's what the vibe I got from Knuckles in this, where he's like just this big hulking figure, and he's like, I will take control, and I will be the guy to run and take and do whatever I want. And it's just like that. Like that's so funny. Like that, I appreciated. I thought that was really like good character choice.
Yeah,
definitely.
So wrapping up on Sonic, let's just go around and give our score of however many out of 5 reels that we want to give it. So Ryan, how about you first?
I'll give it 3.5 out of 5 reels because I think it's a really good kids movie. The wedding plot line doesn't really have a place in the movie, but it doesn't take away from the movie either. I know this movie is not for me. If I was a kid, maybe I'd give it a 5. But you know, as an adult, I'd give it 3.5.
Yep.
And I also want to really praise Ben Schwartz because he is just so energetic as Sonic. He is so great. I love everything that he does. His voice work as Sonic is really incredible. So I feel like we should touch on him as well and give him his flowers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Ethan, how about you?
I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 reels. the wedding subplot did bother me. I think as much as it did you guys. I was just like, okay. But you know, I'm a big Sonic guy. It was really an enjoyable movie experience for me to go and see it. I thought the CGI was great. Shout out to Kid Cudi for the song that he made for it.
Oh, right, yeah.
So much better than the first song that they made for the first movie.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the name of that song or who wrote it, but for this one, Kid Cudi's song, I think it's like All in the Stars or something like that.
It's a good credit song.
It's a great song. He did a great job with it. Shout out to him. But 4 out of 5.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 reels. I did go back and look, and I gave the first one a 3. So it does improve. Like I said, it is an improvement upon them. But yeah, 3.5 out of 5 for me. So before we sign off for this month's episode and wrap things up completely, Ryan, where can the people find you at online?
You can find me. You can follow my Letterboxd account if you like. My name is Barely a Film Buff on Letterboxd. I have an Instagram. It's Ryan.Peasley. I have a Twitter. I don't really use a whole lot. That's Ryan.Peasley as well. I also have a YouTube channel you can follow. Pretty much if you Google my name, you'll find all of my social media accounts because they're all my name. So
Perfect. Ethan?
You can find me most active on my YouTube channel, Wasted Media. I talk about lost pieces of media and sometimes movies if I really feel like it. I've got a new video coming out, hopefully tomorrow, if I can edit it, if I have the time. You can find it there. And you can also find my Letterboxd. It's at Ethan Burns 2. So.
Okay. And you can find me on Letterboxd at WBeam76. You can find the show on Letterboxd at Real Good Movies. And you can also find College TV at collegetv.pfw.edu. And that'll do it for this month's episode of Real Good Movies. Let us know what you thought of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in the comments if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Until the next show, thank you for joining us.
Gosh, I love movies.